Good evening. What I'm going to demonstrate tonight, and we'll pass this one around, is threaded top boxes. The billets for these are 2.5, 3-inch squares, but about that long. And when I get them, I take them home and I turn them around so I can see what I've actually bought, because these things, the term rough sawn doesn't even come close. They beat them square with a hammer, I think. I don't know, but anyway, they really are rough, but the wood is, you find some really nice stuff in it once you turn it. But I do start between centers, and I do that on everything I turn just about. Eventually, I will need to know what the center is. And I've got a hole in each side that's in the center. When I do that, I have to go ahead and turn my tenons while I've got it between centers. And I've already looked at this and saw where I wanted the top to be and what I wanted for the bottom of the box. So. These are D-Way beading tools. Really like them. They do a nice job. Nice thing about those, I mean, you can cut beads with a skew very easily and do a nice job. But if you're doing 10 of them, making them all the same with a skew is a little bit of a challenge. Been hit in the head too many times with stuff coming out of the chuck. I've decided that if it takes a little bit longer for me to crank it down, so be it. One of the guys at the Atlanta symposium, not the last symposium, was going through different chucks, different ways to chuck things. And he said, when you're tightening your chuck, keep your arms close to your body. You're a whole lot stronger here than you are here. He says, and and I've always tightened up each hole a couple of times. And he said, make sure you do that on the chucks. I also marked my #1 jaw. So if I take something out, I can put it back in the same place I had it before. I don't know that there's much difference in it, but I know there's no difference if you put it back, put that #1 back at the #1.
What are you looking for?
I was a piece of this pattern I want to keep. So I was trying to make sure when I do my lid, I'm not going to have threads cut in that piece of pattern that I want to keep. These are Thompson parting tools. I haven't found anything come close to them. They really do a good job. I got 2 sizes that I need the most, and they make a bunch of different widths of these, but they really do work well. They're easy to sharpen. Okay, this is where I'll be cutting my threads. The male threads will be here. And I'm using a thin parting tools. The Woodcraft sells a lubricant for saw blades and rider bits. Stuff is fantastic. If you're ripping boards and getting burn marks, spray that stuff on your blade. You may still get burn marks, but it's something you can sand out really easy. It really does work. And I put it on my parting tools. And it does kind of, depend on what wood you dealing with. I've got a light right here that I can shine straight down, which makes that little piece of wood in the middle very visible. And you say, okay, I can go smaller. Yeah. And it can hit you in the head if you keep messing with it. And that all of this gets turned away anyway, so it doesn't need to be that clean. Everybody that demonstrates will tell you, take the sharp thing out of the tailstock so that you do not impale your elbow on it. My wife, in her old age, has gotten fairly critical, so when I come up and need a Band-Aid, what'd you do stupid this time? Yeah. This is a Sorby tool, and it's for center drilling stuff. It does a nice job. The guys at the symposiums and tool shows love me. Oh, I haven't seen one of those before. How does it work? I'll take one. Surprising how much moisture is still in this. And I've not sharpened that one. And the reason I haven't sharpened it, I'm a little concerned about getting one edge different than the other edge, and it may decide not to go in the center of stuff. And it's not that critical. The nice thing with when you're hollowing stuff, if you've got a center line, a center hole in it, it gives you, whoops, I went too far. You don't have that issue with it jumping on you. Now, I went ahead and put a new blade in this, but when I was loading the truck, this doesn't fit in my bag. It sticks out with the old blade in it. I had to go back in the house. I did something stupid and had to go back in the house and get a Band-Aid. And I'm thinking, darn, if I'd known it was that sharp, I wouldn't have worried about a new blade for it. Okay. I don't want to forget this. All right, see this little edge here? Zoom. There's a little edge here. That matches up with the tenon for the top. So that tells me, okay, you're getting close to that. You've got to leave enough to cut threads in so that won't just go, and you say, okay, now it's one of those tight fitting tops, but it's not threaded. But that way you don't have to measure. It matches up with what you were doing. It's a round head. No, I keep it pretty level, and either level or I will go up with it. Do not go down with it because if it grabs, it's already got leverage that you can't control. You don't stick these in stuff with it spinning, mostly because you'll destroy the tool. Hmm. That's all the deeper I'm going to hollow, since that, like I said, it's not much for you to see when I'm doing that, but I'll finish it out. Okay, what I want to do is go down below where my threads are going to stop and cut the wall thickness out from under. I'll show you. This one will let me get a undercut. This one does something similar, but not exactly the same. These tools, this one and the other one I was using, when you get in the bottom of the box, you've got, and you're cutting with that, and then hit the bottom of the box with this, it there's a lot of friction at that point, and it really is hard to control. So you'd make those cuts very carefully. See, I left a little bit of that hole that I drilled, and that way I've got a long center drill that I can go in and stop just before I get to the bottom. And that lets you, that way with the light, I can look, okay, I still see I've got a small hole. I need to take a little more out. And when you stop seeing a small hole, you've gotten very close to where you want to stop. And boxes, a little extra in the bottom, it's not going to hurt anything. You want it to sit. You don't want it to, you know, so a little weight in the bottom of it, extra wood is not a bad thing. What I want to do is slide this over. I'm tight on that edge and check to make sure that this hole is as close as you can get it to 90, and I'm close enough for this, so I'm not. Okay, finish hollowing it. What I'll do on this outside is I'm going to taper it from large here to just a little bit down so that the top will be, it'll be able to, the edge of the bottom edge of the top will go over the top of this. That way you don't have to worry about the joint showing it. It cleans that up nicely for you. I really do like the Easy Tool hollowing tools. They are easy. They work good. They cut clean. You still have to do a little sanding on occasion. But
You make that or what?
a young man bought a used Nova lathe, the bigger Nova, about this size lathe. And he called up the Woodcraft and he said, I just bought a Nova lathe. And it had, the guy had an ornamental attachment that came with it. I don't want it. I said, what do you want for it? He said, $200. I said, it's already sold. Nova's quit making these. They do some fun things. They've got a head that'll mount on here with a cutter, and then you can index with this on an index wheel, which lets you rotate this, lock it so it doesn't move. You take this loose, And then you bring this up and tighten it. And then you run it in like so until that cutter starts cutting. And you've got stops on it. It'll stop. You back it up, go to the next index, lock it. And what it's done is cut a small circle, but you can cut circles that overlap. You can cut them where they bump. I mean, it really is kind of, it makes some pretty stuff on hardwood tops and stuff. This will let you cut threads. And that's, I was gonna say, you can make, I like 10 threads per inch, and that's what this happens to be also, which is good. You can make take one of that white block, drill it, tap it with a 3/4 tin tap, cut it, put set screws in it so you can close that nut up, basically make it tighter. And you can make this part of it. And if you have an XY table, then you mount it on that and you can cut threads very, very easily. If you're going to, using a Morse taper in the headstock is fine if you're doing stuff between centers because you're pushing that Morse taper or holding it so that it doesn't come out. If you're not doing that, don't do it without a drawbar on it. Because this is heavy as the dickens, but it will come out. And at high RPM, heavy doesn't matter until it hits you. I don't want to find out how bad that would hurt. I'm thinking it would really not be fun. That'll let me get in. Ooh, that's a bit longer than I need, but that's okay. After you set where you're going and start cutting threads, you do not want to turn that one again. And it's got stops on this, so I put the stops up so that it can't go backward or forward. Let's see. It doesn't get any simpler than this for cutting threads. And I have seriously tried hand chasing threads. That is a real hit and miss. I've got something with my other threader that I've made, and I'm getting an ellipse when I rotate it, so something's bent. I know I haven't dropped it, but who knows what it is. I've got to stop and remount and make sure I figure out what the problem is. What I'm doing is advancing this in that direction. And that makes the depth, cuts the depth of the threads. The pressure it puts on the threads, if you're cutting really deep, has a tendency to chip the wood out sometimes.
So you don't put any super glue on it or anything anymore?
Haven't had to on this. Yes, I do, but if North Carolina walnut, you almost have to super glue it because of the grain is so straight. This stuff is so squirrely. You may get a chip out of it, but usually it stays together pretty good.
You don't put oil or anything on there?
No, don't need to. This stuff is really dense, compared to what we know as walnut. It just, yes, I would put thin CA glue. I'd cut and check it if it's still holding pretty good. And, once I get about halfway, I'm gonna say, okay, CA it, let it sit, soak in good, kick it, then come back in and cut it. And a lot of times I will do CA glue for the last cut, just to make that a little bit more little stiffer.
Just from a particular part of a claro walnut tree, or it's a whole tree?
I think this is root, as squirrely as it is. But from my understanding, I did a little research on claro. There's a river coming out of Oregon in the northern, is it Oregon above California? Yeah. There's a river coming out of Oregon and runs pretty good ways through California. And that's the only place these trees grow. And if you had Woodcraft and Bill McGinnis is there, ask him to show you the picture of the shotgun he built. Because and I didn't ask him how much he paid for the blank for the stock, but you don't take this shotgun into the woods. It's a field shotgun. Yeah. Oh, damn, I got too close to that tree. It is beautiful. I mean, really highly figured. Yeah. But some of the stocks on those shotguns are $3,000 and $4,000 a piece. Of course, it's a big chunk of wood, but it's as squirrely as this is. $22.79. I keep my hand on this because that can drive this without me turning it, and I don't want it to do that. I called John when I was seeing if I could make this work on the lathe, and I said, what is it between on the lathe? He called me back, and it was in 31 seconds. And both of us are going, okay, why 31 seconds? Anyway, I took my other mount off of this to check and see, because this has ways on the bottom. I mean, got 1 and 30 seconds. And evidently, Laguna, they matched up with whatever Nova had, which I thought was interesting, but that I'm going to end up taking a lot more wood off of this than I did off of that. But the nice thing is you can see what you're doing here. And if the threads are holding up well, you can make a little more aggressive cuts. This stuff really does hold detail well. And if any of you turned dogwood, incredible wood for holding detail. One of my dad's patients asked him, said, do you ever turn walnut? And Dad said, that's my wood. You know, do you ever use walnut? Dad did a lot of different woodworking stuff. And he said, that would be my wood of choice. And the guy said, well, Doc, I got a bunch of walnut logs cut for firewood. And my dad stopped him and said, well, I don't know that you'll go to hell for burning walnut, but I know you will not get into heaven. So Dad ended up with some nice turning pieces of walnut to turn. Getting reasonably close. I'd like to get this so that it matches that, because re-indexing cutting threads is a challenge, and it doesn't take but a gnat hair to for it not to work very well. One thing you have to remember when you're cutting threads and trying to match this to that, every time you make a rotation, you've taken twice as much off as you thought you were taking off. One thing I like about the one that I made, I've got extruded aluminum. It's got grooves, you know, stuff cut in it. And my front locking bolt is a piece with a tongue that goes into that groove and lock it down. So that once I get it locked down, if I don't want, you know, I don't need to undo that one, I can loosen the back one, slide it back and check. This one, I've got to figure out a way to be able to slide it back and still keep it indexed.
How do you know how deep to go?
You don't. Not when you're cutting the threads. That's a very good question. And with this stuff, and this actually lines up, but it's reasonably close, let's put it that way. There's two ways to get it to match up. This is so squirrely, you don't really have to be too concerned about it. I can cut this deeper, which will let it go down, or I can cut this off, which will let it go down. And that is another one that's another, when you're doing that on stuff that you've got one thing that comes up and ties in, it is a gnat hair. It's either there or you're doing a whole nother rotation. I mean, it really is kind of close. Let's see if I have enough room. Yes. Now, a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. When you're turning burls, you never really know what you're going to find until you turn it. I've got an inclusion in one of these threads that was inside there. Little air hole. And you want to turn that off if you're messing around with that end of it, because if you touch it, it will cut you. Ooh, that's pretty close.
Bruce, you want some sandpaper? You want some sandpaper? It would knock it down.
That's what I usually take the points off of this and this. Otherwise, it will squeak. I mean, if it fits, it'll squeak when it goes in. 100% threads can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. And if it, as humid as it is, if you take it out of the house, you may not be able to get the top off of it. That is extremely tight. So when I sand it, it will take that little bit of snug, sand the points off. It won't be 100% threads anymore. That way it'll come off. Last meeting, somebody asked me, how do you go about getting the top grain to match the bottom grain? Well, two things. You need to, when you part your wood off, it needs to be like this so that you do have wood grain that can, within reason, match. I put this on because I didn't want to keep cutting that down. It needed the depth, actually. All right. Yeah, this thing was squeaking like crazy, and I used Renaissance wax on the inside of it, slick as a Dickens. That's a good finish, and they'll tell you that it's a really good finish, and they will reinforce that with the price of it. It is not inexpensive by any means, but it is a really good finish. All right, I've got them. What I did is look at this, back this off until I got the grain matching up. I said, okay, put a mark here, and I have a mark on this, on a mark here and a mark on that piece. That way I can screw things down, and the distance is from here to here. And you have to take it either off of the top or off of the base. And that isn't very far in distance, I mean, in thickness to take off. And it's aggravating as the Dickens because you can go past it with really easy.
How many radians?
About 4,000, but these are really small radians.
I knew you would know.
Getting your thread to match up is a heck of a lot easier than getting your grain to match up, but it's worth doing.
So each time you take off a little bit, it just allows it to spin.
It lets,
another
it lets us, it lets,
fraction of a turn.
yeah, we were down here.
Okay.
We're right here now. But like I said, if you take too much, then you start taking a bunch off again, and I don't want to make that band a lot smaller.
What's the moisture content in the wood? Any idea?
Ain't much.
If it goes up, will it? That's very technical.
Well, that's, and what I do is buff it with the Canuba wax and use the Renaissance wax on the inside. So whatever's in there stays in, and hopefully it doesn't get any more in it. That may or may not happen, depending on who ends up with it and what they, gee, I think I'll put this on the back porch. Is it glass? Oh, no, it's a screened in porch. I said, have at it. It's yours. Do what?
If you cut too much, you can always do another.
You can,
Never done that though, have you?
yeah, but I've made the other ring. You know, it was about 1/8 of an inch and it ended up being about a 1/16, and it looked fine, but I would have preferred, the design was for it to be 1/8 of an inch. So. As close as I thought. And you can get to a point and say, okay, if I use a skew or if I use something else, I'm gonna take too much. Use some sandpaper. In fact, I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm pretty close right there. Yeah, that'll work. Yes, sir.
Would you make the ring out of?
I don't know what the wood is. I had a piece that was about 12 feet long and about that wide and a little bit thicker than what you see there. So I cut a couple of blocks. A friend of mine wants me to make him a handle for a cane, and I'll use that, the extra pieces that I cut to do the outside edge of it. Now, all I want to do is just take a little wood off. A block would be good if you wanted to. In fact, I've got an angle on this so it slopes down. So when the top seats are seating on the seats on the outside edge. Matched up pretty close. And grain looks reasonably good. I'm going to turn this tenon away and finish the top to match to the bottom. This system really does hold tight. It's just, if you got a Powermatic, making this work is totally different than what you're doing on the Powermatic. But It does do a good job. The bead we did on this, what I did on the other one, I used the beading tools. I'm gonna put a bead up here and do it with the skew. Yeah, I'm not gonna do a finial on this, so I need to get rid of the hole on the top. You can cut with a skew if it's good and sharp. Yeah, the CBN wheels have improved, had improved my turning considerably. If you're getting these, you're cutting. The stuff I was getting with the skew chisel was a little bit of sawdust. You really are scraping with it. I'm
Is that
sorry.
a negative rake scraper?
No,
Okay, I couldn't tell from here.
I sharpen my scrapers. I've got Stuart Beatty tables for the Wolverine, and I love them. They really do work well. And I modified one because he has them going this way. I modified it so it would go that way. So I can put this on it, put my finger, get it lined up, turn it on, put it to it, and just all you have to do is hold it down.
So Bruce, if you're sharpening that tool essentially upside down,
Yes, yes.
doesn't that put the burr on the opposite side of where you need it?
No, it puts it right here.
Yeah, it puts it.
And I've been cutting with it.
It puts it on the top. It's like,
Well,
if you're sharpening it this way, the burr's here.
No.
The burr's on the bottom. Be on the bottom?
yeah.
Okay, okay.
Feel it. It's still got a fair amount on there.
It's Band-Aids.
I was gonna put a finial on this, that hole, unless it was really big, I'd leave it, drill it for the tenon for the finial. And I did put a finial on the Claro walnut one. And I made that one for my son. And he said, Dad, it's leaning. I said, turn it. He said, still leaning. I said, yeah, but it's leaning in the same direction. Yeah, how does that happen? I said, damn fun. I don't. And I told him, I said, I know, I saw that. And I showed him, I said, look, he said, okay, it's tilting in the same direction. I said, yeah, and we rotated 180 degrees. He said, that's weird. I said, if I could have figured out why it was doing it, I'd have fixed it, but I couldn't figure out why it was doing it. Dad said, getting old is not for the weak. I got news for him. Getting old is not for the clumsy, because you know you don't want to go down. How long do you think it's going to take for you to heal? It's going to take a lot longer than it did 20 years ago. It's hard as dickens to get rid of a nipple on something sanded. This is 320. There is occasion where I'll go back with a tool. I do not like to go back with my tools after I start sanding, because we got a friend that does some upholstery type work, and he had some scissors and stuff. He said, I need to cut this, and it was a piece of paper. And I said, well, that's a pair of scissors. He said, oh no, you don't cut paper with those scissors. They're for cutting material only. Sometimes when you're sanding stuff, and I had some there, they're gone now, that, and I'm thinking it's where this edge of the sandpaper is hitting the wood, and it'll leave a mark. And we just turn the lathe off and hand sand it out. It's because you can sand it with the lathe going forever, and you still won't get it out. You may move it, but it won't go away. And the nice thing about the Bill buffing system, when you do the triple E, it'll a lot of times get rid of those, because they really aren't deep at all. It gets really tight sometimes. Okay. And also what I'll do is sand up to 800. And actually I go higher than that. And I don't know what the grid on this stuff is, but it's a plastic steel wool, but it's not steel. And
That green stuff, what?
They got red. Can't remember what the other color is, and a gray, and yeah, and Klingsport has that stuff. Yeah, feel this, y'all come up, feel this, and I haven't gone to the 800 yet, but the difference in this and what this is with just sandpaper, this stuff really does knock that little bit of texture off. I usually make a wood jam chuck for these, so I don't mess the threads up, but I'm gonna center up, okay. And I need to leave that tendon on because I do want to do some more sanding on this. But the only thing more boring than watching somebody sand is watching somebody hollow a deep vessel. Of course, you always can say, he's gonna get a catch soon.
He's gonna break through.
Yeah, or pop through. At last meeting, I made a point to tell you that I start all of my stuff between centers, so that I've got a center point that I've turned from. And it's usually, things may move a little bit, but generally it stays pretty close. And this one I had to get rid of the hole, but that's okay. I knew how to do it, so. To finish the bottom on these, and I'm not going to completely take this, I don't want to take this tendon off because I've got a lot more sanding to do before I, like I said, watching somebody sands. What I do is the center point that I had on the piece went back with the live center and just use this as a jam chuck to push against. And it's pretty close. I mean, it's close enough for what I'm going to do. Usually what I'll do is turn a tenon to go into my piece that's a little bit smaller than the threads and a lip that would match up with this ring on here so that it can't shift on me and leave a shoulder for it to rest against. I don't need much of a shoulder for what since all I'm gonna be doing is sanding after this. So I've taken enough off. And
You ever use it?
you can, yes. Well, I don't want anything that gets real aggressive, and I can make,
Oh, good.
because the way you're holding it. Even if this was a wood piece, if you get real aggressive and it spins, it'll burnish that edge, which may not be a big deal, but then again, it might. I left a little bit of a reveal below this bead so that when it's sitting on the table, it looks like it's floating.
Yeah.
Just ever so slightly. And what I'll do is cut down below that raised spot so that's what it's going to sit on. Things move a little bit, it's still going to sit reasonably flat. And I cut some rings in it. That way I can get my letters when I put my name on the bottom of it reasonably close to the same height. And if you use this kind of a live center, if you use the other live center, and this would work. But this lets you get in very close. The closer something is to being a piece of artwork, you definitely want to shut the lathe off. If it's old chunk of wood and you just starting on it, you hit it, no big deal. And normally what I do is just keep working my way in from the outside. All right, on this piece, leave a big enough diameter that this doesn't split it. And you'll know when it does because things will go. But that you can take it, from out here, you can go all the way down and you can end up with nothing almost left. And you can take that and take a little saw and cut it and sand it, and it disappears. That's it. Making boxes can be a little messy, and you do throw a lot of wood away.
We got one other thing. Last meeting, Bruce used a jig that's not available to most of us. So we both brought ours in that we used before.
I got that.
Rich buddy here bought an expensive one. But you can actually make one of these yourself, relatively inexpensive. You can get an XY table, just build a base for it. This is made from my lathe, it probably won't fit in here. And you mount this on there. And you get whatever thread you want, you can buy a piece of all thread with nuts, and it goes into the chuck, into your vise. And you get an adapter that goes, this here is a 1x8. That'll fit this shaft here, get them from McMaster Car. And you can make one of these, and so cheap, it's unbelievable. I've got about, in this shaft right here, I got about $6. And these particular guys are worth 45 or 50 bucks. So you could build one of these. And it'll do the same thing that other one did.
Exactly. And that one,
You want this other one?
yeah, and it's virtually the same thing, except my screw hole.
Yeah, this has got a whole lot of adjustment in it. So the center line of that top needs to be well, this here, you could actually bring this out. See, this is adjustable. I can bring this out where my cutter is. And when I'm ready to start cutting, I then advance this guy in or out, depending on.
If inside or outside.
Inside, yeah.
Okay, yeah, this way.
Put this in my truck.
And this is set up for the Powermatic.
Don't, you're gonna borrow it, take it down, you know.
This is a 3/4 tin, which matches the threads on these. Which gives me 10 threads per inch. And you can get another one that's 3/4 16 basically, and have 16 threads per inch, which is a little fine, but if you're doing really good hardwood, it doesn't matter.
I think the rule of thumb is if you're going below the 3-inch diameter, go with like 16. As you get bigger, go with 10 or a bigger thread, bigger the.
I've got 2 screws. So what I did is drilled it, tapped it to the threaded rod, took it to the bandsaw and cut a slot in it, which lets it be, anyway, I'll tell you. And then I put drilled and tapped 2 screws that will pinch this thing tight on the threaded rod so that I have no slop in it.
That's important.
Not that you can have a little bit, but this keeps you from having any. And what I did is I closed it up more than I needed to, tapped it again after I cut that slot in it and put the screws in it, and then, which made it, if I opened it up, it was really loose, but if I tighten it up, it's good and tight.
There's always a lot of different ways of doing it. My piece has a YouTube video on that particular design right here.
Yeah, and that works good. And that's easy to get lined up. I mean, this piece here needs to be square to your bed. which will make this 90 degrees to your bed. And it's easy to get that square, get your vise square to the bed so that your screws are going straight in.
And your rod needs to be the center height of your.
Blade, yeah.
It doesn't, no, yes,
Yeah.
it can be plus or minus.
It's not critical.
It's not that critical.
If it's lower, then your adjustment is not gonna have to be that aggressive. If it's right on, your adjustment will be accurate in or out. But if it's above it or below it, you go in and one turn here, it's not gonna be the same as one turn if your cutter's up higher or lower.
Yeah.
So,
0.865.
yeah.
And this, and I've got an issue here, I think, and I don't know why. This is a self-centering washer. It's concave on that part of it, convex on the flat part of what would be a flat part of the washer. And when you put it together, it will shift and let this be square with the threads on that lets this thing move on this nut, because that may not be square, which it doesn't matter. But if you do this, and this is, you want this square, then, and this, see, I've got it threaded all the way to here, so. But I still got an issue because it's giving me a wobble for some reason.